In this episode, I'm talking to Andrew Miller, owner and founder of Business Enjoyment, who, through his journey from accountancy and insolvency practice, has really helped a lot of people understand what it means to actually enjoy running a business, enjoy being in a position of leadership at work, and how we can find those agreements and expectations to help us run our business better, be at work better, but also manage the roles outside of work more successfully, and sometimes just being comfortable with not knowing the answer. His book, More Than Just Money, really triggered this conversation and helped us uncover a lot that I think will benefit you around creating boundaries, knowing more about agreements and expectations. But let's dive into it and see what me and Andrew talked about. So, yeah, welcome. I'm Rob from Dads in Business, trying to help dads bring the best of themselves to work and to home, and have lots of conversations around what it means to be a bloke and a dad in a busy workspace, busy home space as well, and how, I guess, ultimately we can grasp some of the enjoyment and reason as to why we started in business or pushed our career in the first place. And to help us try and digest a bit of that, I'm joined by an expert on the topic of business enjoyment, Mr. Andrew Miller. Andrew, can you give us a bit of a background who you are and what the heck is business enjoyment, please?
Well, hopefully you'd know what it was. Isn't that the idea? It's an ideal concept. So I don't know which to start. Well, that would just as a basic overview of business enjoyment, that if you were to nail it down, then it's about working with people who want to measure success in something that's more than just how much money they make. And I think there's a lot of problems, a lot of issues in the world, in society, and certainly in business, that when we just focus on sales and profits, and that's it. And they are important, don't get me wrong, but it's when it's just that we start losing the focus, and all the other things are important to us. And it came about, my background is, I'm actually an accountant by background. Yeah.
Oh, wow. There's some enjoyment.
Gets even better. I used to be an insolvency practitioner. So my job was to go in when companies went bust, take control of those companies, run them, ideally keep them going and sell them. And so huge amount of business experience. I've run just about every business you can probably think of in terms of industry. But you're working alongside people whose babies are dying, essentially. You know, it's everything. They put their love and their passion and everything into it, and they're watching it collapse. So it really drilled home how, you know, everyone talks about business and the processes of business, but the emotional element that comes with it is very, very stark. And when I first moved into the coaching space, it was focused specifically on those people going through losing everything and help them deal with the emotional stress that goes with it. So I've got much more into the deeper psychological things and helping people deal with trauma and beliefs and that kind of thing.
So and part of your work now about preventative work as well?
Well, you sort of do that as well, but but it sort of shifted and moved because I got very focused in that area. It built to a certain level. I wrote a book on it. I got talking to government about providing a support network for people. It was going good places, but I wasn't actually making money out of it myself.
And then you forgot that bit.
But it was just we're talking 10 years ago when coaching wasn't as well known as it was now, and in a very sort of archaic environment, should we say. They were not the most forward thinking of arenas. It was very hard to sort of break an edge, but so I shifted. I was working with people all stages of success, and what I noticed was that your people losing everything in that really bad place. Obviously they're not in a great place. It totally makes sense. The trauma is horrific. But then I'd go networking, I'd meet people, we'd be chatting, and they're running their own business, and they're not exactly jumping up and down with excitement with the business that they've set up and created. And then you meet really successful people, and I've interviewed millionaires being treated for stress, anxiety, depression, and you just think, what's your excuse?
So something's not right here, is it?
And this is it. Clearly, the financial success of our business is not the same as our personal success or certainly our enjoyment. And that's basically where the concept of enjoyment came from. Business job. It's like, hang on a sec, why on earth are we running our own business? If we want to be miserable and make money, we can do a job, we can rob a bank, whatever you want to do.
I think the majority of small business owners or them that's trying to push a career work so many long hours. It's actually the worst paid job they've ever had. So we can't be in it for the money in that respect, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Or do we set out with that intention of I'm going to be a millionaire, then realize reality hits and it's not going to be all that, and this is a trudge. So why do you find that business owners aren't enjoying
it's the
business?
There's several paths, but the most common path is as I did, and probably you did, as you alluded to there, is you have a job, and then ultimately you I went in a completely different direction, but very often it's some form of, hang on a sec, I can do this just as well, probably better, faster, swifter, more efficiently if I just did it by myself. I've got no boss, I'm in control, I'm in charge, and you step out of the corporate environment and set up your own thing. And two things tend to happen. One is, both around the same sort of concept, but at the end of the day, if you've never run a business before, you're like going, right, what do I do? So the only thing you know is what you stepped out of. So one thing that happens is so many people run their new business exactly the same way they ran their lives when they were in the corporate job mode, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, work every hour until someone says stop. But as you're the boss, you never say stop, and so on and so forth. So they actually bring in all the bad habits they've just got away from. The other thing is, of course, now you're by yourself. There's nowhere to hide. So when you're in the corporate environment, you got protected from certain things. You got support from various areas of things. So suddenly all your fears, all your lack of skills, all the stuff that you didn't even know were a problem, suddenly they're out exposed to the universe. And that's when it suddenly becomes a scary place. And all this stuff that comes up when you were like, the patterns of behavior in your subconscious that arise when you're like 5 years old, sort of things start clipping through, and suddenly you're sort of making weird decisions because it just feels the right thing to do, but you don't know why you do them, and you just do it. So you end up getting...
because I guess you're really exposing yourself, aren't you? Either when you're running your own business or when you're in that position of leadership, you're exposed because it stops with you, I guess, in that respect, doesn't it? So while it sounds like a great idea when you're starting it, in reality, oh my God, where's all my support gone now? And you're right, you're responsible for accounts, you're responsible for marketing, for sales, for operations and everything. And you just don't, if you love doing what you do, that doesn't mean that you're a great business person at it necessarily, because you practice doing what you do. Then when there's skills to come across here that, oh, hang on, there's more to running a business than just doing what I did. Oh, goodness me, that's overwhelming almost, you know?
And I would hope that everybody loves that core thing. Otherwise, why on earth are you doing that? Running that business if you don't enjoy the core thing? It's all those bits around it. And the habits will get interested. We'll start taking on work just because we need to pay the bills and all the rest, and go into panic mode. So we just take any job that's going, say yes, do everything. And all of a sudden we've discounted, maybe we'll do whatever we do to get them across the line. Now we're working with complete idiots. They don't pay us on time. They don't appreciate our work. We're pain to work with. And then we're not enjoying the day-to-day job because the actual stuff, these sort of things start coming in, which are all little habits and patterns that we picked up without thinking about.
Well, I can connect with quite a lot of that, because when I first got into self-employment, it was through redundancy. So I had a 2-year-old and a pregnant wife. She was pregnant with our second, got made redundant. And that was the sort of fire or the kick I needed to say, right, I'm going to do this on my own and prove a point. Didn't realize what I was going to do. I was just like, I can help a lot of people. I'm going to do that. But then there's external pressures that come on. And I always remember one of the missus's mates saying, when's he going to get a proper job? What's he doing messing about? There's never all this championing of, you're setting up on your own, off you go. It's always like, what you're messing about at. So that does sort of kick you into, I'm going to prove a point to everyone else, and you forget yourself a little bit. And then you think, well, I've tried to prove a point out here, but what am I doing about myself? And I think that's where, certainly in the early days, I almost like hit burnout because I wasn't checking in to say, am I doing what I want to do, or am I just saying yes to everything? To your point, I'll say yes to networking sessions. I'll say yes to these conversations, meetings that are going nowhere. But then when someone says, "Oh, you're busy," I can go, "Yeah, I'm really busy. I'm super busy," because that's the measure of success, isn't it?
It said, yeah, it's a good story to tell. It kind of, no one needs to push any further. It's like, I'm busy. That's all you need to know. For me, it used to be talking to my parents, and they never understood what I was doing, and it didn't make sense to them. So it was a case of, it took a while to get going, and does with any sort of new business. It's like, have you thought about a plan B, and maybe you should go back into sort of employment, all this sort of stuff. And remember first time I actually got a client, it was a case of, oh, I've got a paying client. And they, oh, that's good. Yeah. When's the next one coming along? It's like, can we just celebrate the one I've got?
Yeah, let's just celebrate this for now, please.
Until it got to the point, I just stopped having detailed conversations with them. It would just go, how's business? Yeah, really good, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. See, this again caused a bit of my, I didn't get to burnout, but thankfully I saw Anger, my dad's in business colleague, saw him doing a talk about burnout, and I was ticking off boxes saying, that sounds like me, it sounds like me. But it's quite a lonely place, I guess, when you're in that sort of owner managed business management position, because challenges are more unique. And no matter where you turn, you can't say things aren't all right. If you go to networking events, how's work? I'm really busy. You go home, the missus is like, is work good? Fantastic, even though it might not be. Well, then you go to the pub or whatever, and
it's our social etiquette as well. If you meet someone on the street, oh, how you doing? Oh, I'm good, thanks. Yeah. If you outside of business, how's the weather? If you met a friend, nothing to do with the business, said, how are you doing? And they said, do you know what, actually, the pain in my right leg's really giving me jip or something. Oh, I didn't actually want to know the details. It was just being polite.
It's just a platitude. It's just hello.
So we easily step into those platitudes, and it's the same in business. So you've got to get, so only when you get into a quieter space and have a deeper conversation with people, you really feel comfortable in revealing it, because the social etiquette says just keep it at a service level and start asking the right questions and getting into really what's going on.
So what can business owners do, or leadership people in leadership positions do, if no one's forthcoming with those questions and they're wanting a bit of a vent? How do you find people reach out for support rather than wait to be asked, because they could be struggling silently in themselves, right?
Yeah, well, this is it. Yeah, I mean, and it depends who's listening, and because you sort of, there was two questions in there in terms of how you help others and how you do it yourself. So it is very different. So for what one thing that always gets missed off as a note when people talk about mental health and this kind of thing, and it's okay to not be okay, and always talk to a friend and talk to people, that kind of stuff. The truth of the matter is, and you've alluded to, is that most people in this sort of space that go through a mental health issue, stress, whatever it is, don't actually realize that they're stressed. It's we've been used to this societal norm of, as you put the work in. It's the I don't know what it's the Protestant work ethic, it's the Industrial Revolution, whatever. Everything from there on is you put the work in. You need a good work ethic. It's a nose to the grindstone. You keep going. Resilience, that's the word for the moment.
Yeah,
it's all about resilience, and these are all fantastic traits to have for sure, and you need them in place. But they're applauded and hero worship to have these things, which means you can't, anything, it then tips into the reverse, because anything reverse of that, you start saying, oh, you know what, if you're not having that and you're lazy, you're a slacker, you're a snowflake, all these sort of things coming up. But you then end up in this space where you can't pull back, you can't slow down. And we end up tolerating being in shit.
that's really interesting. Yeah, so we push our boundaries a bit and just get more comfortable with a level of stress, then push a bit more and get more comfortable with just this level of stress. But if we look back, I'm just this stressed thing now, and I've not actually realized I'm over here.
And there's people in that space there that will champion it. I'm so stressed. That's effectively what they're saying. I only sleep 3 hours a night. I'm up at 5 a.m. morning, and I work harder than anybody else, kind of thing. It's a badge of pride. And there isn't a badge of pride that says, you know what, I only work three hours a day and everyone else does it. And then I go off and spend the rest of the time on the boat. except for the really rich people who've worked out how to do it.
Who figured it out. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So the key thing always comes with the individual is to actually start saying it's okay to listen to what the body's going, how you feel. Do I feel like things are good? Normally it's going to come out in some sort of message. The back's going to go, or the knees are going to go, or the hips are going to go, or the shoulders, particularly with bloke shoulders, pain around the neck, pain around the shoulders, all that kind of thing, because of the burdens and the weight and everything. Start listening to the body and start noticing whether those things which, do you know what, I feel I could be a bit healthier. And you start, and because it's normally going to come from a stressful situation rather than a physical one.
So you said there about, it's more sort of prevalent in men to sort of get shoulder pains as a sign of stress. Do you notice differences in men and women in this business enjoyment space, in the stress space? What's I mean,
it's a broad brush because every individual is individual. So if you talk about the stereotypes, you'll always find somebody that doesn't fit in the stereotypes. But if we're going to go generic, we'll go generic. So I mean, with women, it tends to be the mother mentality of I need help. I need to be that, take that mother role, even if they don't have kids. It's still I'm going to be the one that's going to look after everybody else. You sit down, I'll sort it out, I'll get it done, and it's my responsibility to make sure everyone else is okay. So they're determined to put everybody else before them, and they will put themselves last. And the thought of actually looking after themselves for once and putting themselves first, or actually charging properly or whatever it might be, falls down the list, and it becomes very hard for them to step forward. With men, it tends to be a lot more but obviously that responsibility to be a provider kind of thing. So if the bank account starts drifting down, that's going to hit right in the center, because it's my job to provide the money. I'm the money earner. We've still got those sort of stereotypes from the past. It's not true anymore, but it still sticks in. And a fear of, what's the word? Ridicule, losing face, not being good enough, not being the one who knows. We feel like we have to know everything. Don't worry, we know what we're doing. We don't need to tell you, but we've got it covered. We've got it controlled. Like, go back to you say when you get the networking, it's like, yeah, it's all sorted, it's all fine, I've got it.
Deep down it's like, I haven't got a clue, but it's fine. Calm seas.
thought of asking for help sort of thing is a sign of weakness and all this kind of stuff. I normally lock it into sort of three key things that most people have driven by one of these, or held back, whichever one it is. But there's a fear of not having enough, or losing everything, that sort of sense. So it's like, no matter how much money you've got, it's like, I need to be doing more, need to be doing more, need to be doing more. There's a fear of not being enough. So am I fitting the role that ought to be there? I don't want to lose face. I'm worried about the failure, as I say, need to be in control and that kind of stuff. And then there's a fear of not being accepted, the rejection kind of thing. And as I say, everyone's going to have a little bit of everything thrown in, but normally there's one that stands out for that individual a bit more. So for me, it was fear of rejection. I've managed to trace it back to when I was very young at this thing, but essentially the thought of someone saying no to me or whatever it might be had a physical revulsion on me. So I became like a people pleaser. So I would do anything to make sure that anybody was happy. I would over deliver, I would undercharge, I'd give stuff away for free, whatever it might be, because I just wanted people to like me. And I mean, the extreme case for me was I couldn't phone anybody up that was not expecting my call.
Interesting.
So
go on.
if I wanted to speak to you and you weren't, and I could not pick the phone up and give you a call, I'd have to email you and arrange a time to call you.
See, I can kind of connect with that. It'd be interesting to uncover where that, without going too deep, where that sort of comes from, because I've been known to avoid phone calls or making phone calls. And I can really connect with that. I just want to make people happy.
Yeah.
And I don't like it when someone says it's because of you we're not here. And I was like, oh my God, this is horrible. It feels awful. And yeah, I rarely make spontaneous phone calls.
And I mean, if, cold calling out the window.
Yeah.
But even somebody you can't call. So for me, it was, so ultimately there was a fear of rejection. But I had got it in my head from various instances that happened that if I'm ringing somebody up, I'm interrupting them. I'm interrupting their day. I'm breaking up their routine. I'm annoying them. And so my fear of rejection had transferred through other various things into a fear of annoying other people and interrupting getting their day. So it was actually a fear of annoyance is how it was coming through. Yeah. So you might want to have a little think back there. Okay, well, because for me, I remember sort of being young on holiday with my parents, and I was trying to get my dad's attention, dad, and I was just trying to, and he was talking to mum, and I was being an annoying little brat, so he just turned around and yelled at me.
And that's stuck.
It stuck, exactly.
Wow, it's amazing, isn't it? What we remember and what connects and what affects us from such a young age.
Yeah, well, we don't remember it consciously. Remember it subconsciously. It's the way the body works. We are. If you think about when you're young, at some point in your youth, you put your hand in a flame, and you're going to go, "Ow," and your body learns, "Don't do that again." Now, it's not like case the next time you see a flame, you go, "Oh, what do I do?" You know not to do it again. And when you're like 90 and getting Alzheimer's, you still know not to stick your hand in a flame. It's just the body learns and it doesn't relearn. So what it then does is, at future points when there's something happens it's not come across before, but it feels like it's similar to something it's been before, then it will bring the same emotion in. So
it'll almost look back to an index that's a bit like this, and
it's a bit like that. That's how I felt in this situation. So that's how I feel in this situation. You've heard the tales of, hopefully never experienced, but people talk about when there's a near-death experience and the light flashing through their eyes. They think that is the, I think it's the hippocampus, but it's the part of the brain that the Rolodex flicking through going, oh my God, what's this like? I've never seen this before. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? So it's flipping through the things, trying to find some sort of way of reacting. So it's a very primal, very core basic thing, but we are trained to we are designed to bring patterns into our behavior, and so we don't have to keep relearning, and we don't have to keep rethinking every time, so they just happen automatically. So that means when we get into business or in life, whatever, we are running on patterns we don't even know we're running on.
Yeah, it's just autopilot, isn't it? It's like breathing. We never think breathe in, breathe out. It just happens, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I suspect with you, if it's the same as me, it gets to the point where you never actually at the point where you're holding a phone going, oh, I don't want to ring them, because you've done something about 6 steps beforehand where you never actually engineer the need for a phone call.
Yeah, it just doesn't appear. I'll just email, I'll WhatsApp, I'll Facebook them, I'll pretty much do anything but make a phone call. And I'm pretty sure that annoys people who then try to call me, and I'm like, oh no, I can't, because I don't know why. It probably goes back to because my mother used to be, when my dad was still around, he was on the heart transplant wait list. And there was a point where the hospital could phone at any time of the day, 24/7, anytime, because obviously they could get called in. So after that, my mom had a massive fear of the phone. If the phone rang, she'd jump out of her skin. Because even though that wasn't going to happen now, because the operation happened, it triggered. Oh my God. So I think it's probably something from that almost. It's like, oh God, the phone's ringing.
Yeah, because in your head, you're ringing your mum.
Yeah, and I've not processed that someone's about to phone me, and now it's just a weird interruption to my day. And everything has to be right for me to then answer that phone. It's really.
But even you ringing out, it maybe you made a connection subconsciously that affected the reaction your mum experiences when you ring that phone. Whoever you ring is going to experience that in the same way. Yeah,
yes. I guess that's that fear of being accepted bit that you talked about. And for me, Andrew, each of those, as you were saying them, I think crop up at different times. I don't know if that's because I'm a bloke or if it's just because
we have a mix of all three, but normally there's one that is.
Because I can think of each of them becoming prevalent, where it's fear of not having enough. That's proving the point. I'm going to look after the kids. I won't stop until that's happened.
Mm.
But then there's fear of being enough. But if I'm always at work, that means I'm not over here. I'm not looking after the kids and doing my stuff at home. So am I enough? Am I good enough? So then that becomes prevalent, because that then plays on your mind. And then when you're at work being busy, you're thinking you should be somewhere else. So your mind can then drift. And it really pulls across. And that can, if you don't check in with that, it can really become quite consuming, I think, especially for smaller business owners or them that have a lot of work pressures, you know. And I think it's not something that is often addressed or spoken about. So I think the work that you're doing is incredibly important. I think it's going to become much more prevalent, probably in a more post-COVID world. I don't want to have a big conversation about the pandemic, but
well, yeah, and I mean, my hope that it is, and the dialogue has been shifting over the last sort of 10 years. I've been in the environment for sure, but I think COVID has had some very interesting, and COVID on one hand, but also the media and all the stuff that goes around it. So what I've noticed in the very recent things, we've gone through Project Fear, and everybody in a state of this is kind of the fear of losing everything. That's what it's been tapping into, real base level kind of stuff, because you might die and all this. It's now moved into fear of very much fear of lack. You know, there aren't enough drivers, there aren't enough stuff in the shelves, there aren't enough this, it's not this, not this, and lack mentality is now going to become one of the overriding things within the country. So no one's going to take any risks, go out the comfort zone, start paying more than they need to, because hang on, well, there's not enough drivers around, and there's not enough fuels going, the prices going up, and all the rest of it, and there's a risk that the message that will bleed through everybody is to hold back and don't push out too much, and that will slow down the economy even more and have a more negative effect.
Just bigger knock-on effect further down, isn't it? Yeah. And have you noticed any sort of distinct changes in, I guess, particularly more men for this conversation, but it'd be interesting to have some comparisons about pre-March 2020 and to now, what we're now, November 2021, because I know a lot of dads and a lot of men who actually use this time, the first lockdown time, to almost reconnect. It was like a forced stop. It's like, you are going to stop and reassess what you're doing. And you know, some industries and businesses we talked to, it was kind of like, well, I couldn't work 80 hours a week and I enjoyed it. Now it's almost like at the dog track where they pull the cages up and the dogs go. As soon as they were allowed to, they were straight back to working 80 hours a week and been miserable. It's like, why have you gone straight back to what you know? You enjoy this. Why is the goal now to be unhappy over here if you've enjoyed this? And why does that happen? when we've enjoyed this moment here and said how great it was, and it really let me check in and do this, that when we're allowed, we go back to what the norm was.
Yeah.
My goal is to get super busy again, even though, to be honest, I survived, saved money, engaged my family, I was around more, but now I can do this. I'm going to do this.
Yeah. And the thing is, and you touched it earlier on, isn't it, is interesting that, and this is the thing I'm trying to talk about with business enjoyment, is that, but when you're in that space of having time with the family, getting to know people better, still putting the work in, but actually, you know, a sensible amount of hours and all the rest of it, and actually enjoying working, you feel guilty. You feel like this isn't right. You feel like you don't deserve it, or whatever it is. People don't feel comfortable in enjoying themselves. You know, enjoying yourself is a Friday night and a Saturday night thing, and then you get hacked the next day. That's basically what it comes down to in social terms. But as a life, and actually running a business where you actually enjoy what you do on a day-to-day basis and not stress, people can't even grasp the concept.
And why? I mean, it's such a big topic to get into, but why is that on a headline basis? Why?
Because of the social expectations. Because it goes back to this kind of the hero worship of the resilient man.
Yeah, like the caveman theory almost. Yeah.
In communist Russia, it was the carnavites. So have you heard of them? But in this would be Stalin, I think, probably. Let's say Stalin anyway. It could have been Lenin, but it was that sort of time. But in order to get the average worker to do more work and produce more, they raised up the elevation of these. There was a particular person called Stakhanov who worked like a Trojan, put the hours in and the rest of it, and he was lifted up to this godlike status, and everybody who worked this, they were called carnavites. And so it was there to spur, look, you can do this, you can do this, you can do this, to make sure people work really hard. And that's the sort of society we live in. You know, it's the hard worker is applauded.
Yeah.
And so we feel unworthy to be smart.
Yeah, I could do better, but I can't do better because everyone else will think differently of me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there was a really interesting piece from some research we did post-COVID around the dad space, where there was a large group, it's a sample of 100 or so. And we said, do you feel that you're always on? Or there's an expectation of you to be always on at work? This was hybrid working, remote working. And I think 77-80% of people believed there was either an implicit or explicit expectation of them to be always on. It's like, you're working from home, you're on. And there's no boundary there. So that it's easy to fall into that trap then, isn't it? Of the expectation is I always work because my employer or my business assumes that I'm always on. So therefore I must be always on, and I'll default to this.
A friend of mine worked in London, and he would start work at 8 o'clock in the office, wherever it was. And then they started working from home, and the boss goes, oh, right, okay, so you've got an hour where you're not on the train. That means you're up for 7. Let's have to start having to calls at 7. So instead of an extra hour in bed, it was just an extra hour work, you know.
We did some work for international company. There were a lot of pressure on them, huge company. And some of the feedback and insight from that was, it's my management are putting meetings in my diary when they know I'm on the school run. And they'll say, I'm not doing enough at work. Because there is no boundary there, I guess. And
you know, time and again, and I've seen it with I've spoken to a lot of women who are feel like they're under pressure to be like a man, you know, in a business sense. And then also men, as you say, who are kind of just expected to fit that role and be there till 10 o'clock at night or whatever it might be. But when you drill down, what was interesting in the sentences was that they believed that there was an implicit or explicit assumption. So implicit is implied, therefore belief. Explicit suggests they've actually been told. So if they believe that there's an explicit, interesting, not sure what that means.
No. Maybe that was my wording of the question.
In most cases, it is a belief. And if it's that doesn't, so the situation we're talking about, whether the stuff's putting in the calendar, it's like, okay, well, I've told them, but that doesn't necessarily mean they've understood what it means. There's no repercussions of it. So if there's bad behavior, it's always, you know, something we don't like, it's always our responsibility to look at our own situation, and rather than sit there and go, oh, I'm a victim and everything around me is horrible, aren't they terrible? It's like, okay, what can I do to improve the situation? Let's take control of our own situation. So first off, with beliefs, you know, and you were talking about the roles that we ought to have. We've discussed about that, and the stigma of how we should be, and what the perceptions are, and also what the expectations of work are. These are all beliefs. And the thing to remember with any belief is it's all bollocks. That's the starting point.
I'll add that in the summary, I think.
If you start on that assumption and work forward from there, and start, let's just challenge this. Because the truth of the matter is, if it's, you know, certainly, like, if people start thinking badly of you, someone might say something, but it's only an issue if you take it on board. So I can call you an idiot, and I could just be, whatever tone that might be, it's up to you whether you accept that or not.
Yeah. I
could say you're useless at what you do. It's up to you whether you accept that or not. So it's always our responsibility to take to whether we accept or not. So it doesn't matter what anybody says, it's what we are confident in. You know, there are times we know we've not done a good job. Okay, I'll do a better job next time. Fair enough. And then if there are certain expectations that, well, so first of all, it's about communicating what you actually, how things are going to work. So if just saying these are my work hours and I'm off here and all the rest of it, and then walking away, we don't know for a fact that it's been fully communicated and fully understood, or the repercussions of it, or why it's important, all the rest of it. So it needs to be having a proper discussion. And we've not talked on here, but you've alluded to a thing called agreements and expectations. A lot of people live in their lives expecting things to happen, and then get disappointed when they don't happen because it's never been agreed. So it's normally just sits in our head. So actually sitting down and agreeing how things are going to work is always going to produce a much more profitable thing. And I think there's a fear or belief that when it comes to an employment world, that it's a dictatorial hierarchical system where we are puppets and do what the boss says.
We behave, look, act, sound like the boss.
If the boss says jump, we say how high.
Yeah.
Whereas in reality, it's more amorphous than that. You know, that's not how business works these days. We are anybody can start a business tomorrow. The industry is not, people are finding it hard to fill jobs at the moment. So there's not a swarm of people coming through. So to sit there thinking I might lose a job, I might get sacked, well, if you do, you can always go and do something else because there's plenty out there. So it means that what we're trying to do is come up with is that we are bodies who need to cooperate for the most efficient way forward. So rather than sitting there thinking I'm the bottom of a pile and I have to do what my boss says, it's like, hang on a sec, how do we all work together for the mutual benefit of both the company, the boss, or whoever it is I'm working with, and myself? And if we're all working together, then we can do it. It doesn't matter what level you're at, it's still a cooperation rather than a dictation.
It's fascinating, but I guess there's the belief, which you say, beliefs are bollocks. I like that line.
Belief is bollocks.
There's something stopping those people having conversations, isn't there? And does that refer back
to... It'll be fear. Either fear they're going to lose their job, fear they're going to be rejected or shouted at, fear they'll look like an idiot, or same fears every time. Yeah,
and I guess it potentially shows some vulnerability as well. So if I wanted to have a conversation with the missus about I want to work less, for example, that might be, why do you want to work less? Can't you see we need more? I don't think she would say that, but as an extreme, it could be, well, you're going to be failing as a man and a dad if you say you want to work less. So I guess that goes back to the fear of not having enough or not being enough, right?
And yes, not being enough, exactly. And would your wife actually turn around and say you're failing at being a man?
I'd hope not. I've been married 10 years now.
And let's put it this way: if the company you work for were to turn around and say things like that, that's really not a company you want to be working with.
Yeah. So I guess I really like the responsibility line. I think there's a huge, probably separate conversation about all the responsibility piece, because I think we're too quick to blame quite often. And I think if we just think, even if it's not my fault, what could I have done differently that might have contributed to a different outcome? And we could start, for me, it was like a bit of a light switch moment. It was the 7 Habits book, which I'm sure you've read. One of those talks about responsibility. And it's fascinating. If you just look at the world in that respect, what could I have done differently? How can I do differently that might impact on that? Because I can't control this. So why is it? But I'm not saying it doesn't. But why should it bother me? There are things that bother me still. It's not like I've been perfect, is it? But if you can go into it with eyes wide open and not just assume, I guess, and take some responsibility, we can start to create better boundaries potentially about what we do and what's acceptable for us and our families as well.
I mean, going back to the sort of entrepreneurial side, I think one thing I always say, the business journey for something starting their business is really a personal journey. You know, the business is almost that's processes and systems. It's actually a journey of self to understand who you are. And the more you understand who you are, the more successful you're going to be in your business. And obviously the same in the employment space. Can't remember where I was going with that.
I was mentioning about boundaries and setting boundaries through responsibility.
Yeah, but no, the other thing that happened was at the start of the victim and the taking control. So at the start of lockdown back in March, sort of thing, it should hopefully be now very apparent to notice there were people who right from the start said, okay, what am I going to do? I'm going to shift, I'm going to change. Pivot was the word of the time. Kind of thing.
God, yeah.
And there's loads of people who've done incredibly well through lockdown because they went, okay, this is the situation. What can I do about it? And then there are others that just sat there going, government's not giving me any money. Why am I not getting paid? When am I going to get furloughed? When someone to give me a handout? When someone, and did frickle for the entire period. And, guess who's further ahead?
Yeah. I guess it's something happens to us. What's our response?
Yeah,
and we can go that way or we can go that way.
Always starts with self. We've always got an option. We've always got a choice. We've always got something we can do. It may not be brilliant, may not be a great option, but it's still better than the other one. We're never forced in a situation.
Yeah.
Forced options.
And it's a fascinating topic, and there's all sorts of spin-offs from it, isn't it? The whole responsibility, the fight or flight, the not letting external factors impact us and affect us. But I guess we have to summarize and sum it up soon, because we could talk for hours about this. What's a good way, I guess, to check in with yourself and actually, early on we were talking about you actually get comfortable with levels of stress, and that becomes the norm, and you don't actually realize that you're getting to a stressful point. It'd be quite good to get some, I guess, takeaways around that, about what people can do to start reflecting back to see, are they where they want to be? Are they actually enjoying what they're doing? And what's something they can do to check that and to take steps to, I guess, enjoy their roles, their journey of self, which is they're running their business a little bit more. A big question.
You want that in 30 seconds?
Yeah, a couple of takeaways I think would be really helpful.
I do have a questionnaire on my website.
We'll get to that.
But no, it's just thinking about things. And I think, for me, that we've again, a huge subject we've not touched on. You mentioned briefly a why at the start, but for me, there's a big thing about a sense of purpose and understanding what it is that we're trying to do, why we're here, why we're doing it, who it's for, and getting into that sort of space. And I think there's a lot of that would have been happening over the last 18 months. So understanding and for the audience, family is going to be a big part of that. So always remembering who we're doing things for and why we're doing it is always important. But I think the starting point is to go with, look, let's say it is family and the kids. I think, to be the best dad, to be the best person, you need to be the fittest, healthiest, sort of best you can be for your son. So what does an ideal dad look like in terms of bringing him up and looking after him and all the rest of it? And what it doesn't look like is irritable, angry, flaked out, knackered, whatever it is. We know that incessantly. So it's not thinking about what a good dad would look like. In other words, what do you want to be? What do you want to look like as a healthy, feeling good sort of thing? And notice what's different, what your gap is. So, as I say, there'll be some elements of only sleeping 3 hours a night because you're constantly thinking about things, going on holiday and not being able to switch off for a week because you're constantly worried about work. Aches, pains, as I mentioned before, the knees, backs and shoulders are some of the key things. Hips sometimes as well with legs. If you're getting aches and pains in those areas and it's getting chronic and just sort of like, just permanently that's a clue that there's something needs looking at. And yeah, sometimes just take that moment just to say, hang on, am I enjoying things? Is this actually how life should be? And you may not know the answer from that, but just if something just doesn't feel right, at least it makes you think, okay, let's start noticing, because the whole objective of everything is start noticing things and then you can do stuff about it. If you just keep going through 100 mile an hour, it will rush you by and you won't notice.
Yeah.
That's the danger.
I really like that one, that the start noticing things. Be a bit more. I mean, again, it's something I struggle with, is the whole mindfulness thing, and it's something I struggle to get into. But I certainly take times to check and just say, I set myself goals. Did I get home for bedtime this amount of times per week? Did I take the kids swimming to football this time this week? Have I played with them? Did I see my wife this week? And is there a work-life balance that we're happy with? And I say we are happy with because the missus looks after the kids way more than I do, because I'm out running my business and doing work. There's an agreement there.
Yeah.
Those expectations might be separate, but until we can do that and check in with that, I think that's where the sort of development comes from, if you like.
And there's no harm in, as you say, you want to have a certain balance, and you've come to an agreement as to who does what. And sometimes it's you might have to sacrifice one thing today for tomorrow kind of thing. It's like, look, I know I said I'd be home for and down with the kids at 5 o'clock, but this time I do have this important thing that needs to be done. I talk about what it is. I've got this particular thing, but if it does come through, it'd be great, fantastic. But tell you what, as an exchange, how about next Saturday we go and do something else instead? And you can have conversations in this area.
Yeah, well, that's it, is it? Rather than just saying I'm busy, you deal with it.
Yeah.
It's I acknowledge I've got busier, but it's important because of this. So what can we do to maintain that balance further down the line? And I think that's something that gets lost, isn't it? Because as blokes, we go off doing this because that's what we do and that's our role and our job. Sod everything else. And I think, just checking in and asking yourself, is everything all right? Am I actually enjoying this still? Am I still where I was?
And again, it's this thing of having to be in control and know everything. Start getting comfortable in not knowing the answer, but notice that there's a problem and that the answer will be out there. So now it becomes a task. Okay, well, let's try and work the what and the how out, but noticing that it exists is the starting point every time.
I'm just making a note of that, Andrew. Get comfortable with not knowing the answer. I think that's a nice summary point. I like that.
Well, sometimes I do say the art of business and the art of business enjoyment is being comfortable in chaos.
I'll write that one down too. Just while writing that down, Andrew, how can we connect? How can people find you? Tell us about your book.
So I mean, obviously I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook. LinkedIn's probably the best thing if you want to just connect me on social media. But if you go into my website, businessenjoyment.com, who'd have thought? So there you can get a download of my book, which is called More Than Just Money, which runs through my basic ethos. It runs through the business enjoyment model. It runs through how you can use that. We sort of touched on a few things today, but how you can use it, the model, to find solutions to whatever problem you're facing. And it will refer in that you get a couple of emails, but not much. I'm not a spammer, just whatever. But it will send you a link to the business cheat sheet. So everything you need to know about business on one side of A4, and on the back of it is a questionnaire, so you can take a little score check to see where you're on the different areas in terms of basically, are you enjoying life and business? Oh,
fantastic!
And it just gives you a little, and it's not an absolute score. It's not like if I get this, it's more of a tracker. So it's like, well, where am I right now? Okay, where are my gaps? Well, this could be high, this could be low, and you can track it every month, 6 months, whatever suits.
And you can check back in with yourself again and make sure there's some progress in the right areas, I guess.
Questions there to poke into all the different areas and things. So sort of like, start giving some clues, like, oh, okay, well, maybe that's an area I need to focus on.
Oh, fantastic. Good. Well, Andrew, thank you so much for your time. I think we've been chatting for almost an hour now. Time flies, doesn't it?
I said to my wife, I'll be down in half an hour. And
I know. I shouldn't have said that. But no, Andrew, it's been great. Businessenjoyment.com. Andrew Miller on LinkedIn.
Yeah,
it's Miller with an E, isn't it?
With an E, yeah, that's correct.
Fantastic. This will be out on YouTube, the blogs, probably a podcast episode too. It'll be everywhere.
Everywhere.
So yeah, thank you very much, Andrew. It's been a pleasure chatting. We'll catch up soon, huh?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Rob. And really great to catch up. Thank you.
Good stuff. Take care, mate.
Bye.